everybody to Obinisa Talk. I am Nikini Inaru.
And I'm Nicole Apetebi Iyamile.
This is our first episode, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Before anything, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, everything. Turn your notifications on if you have to. And make sure you follow us on our social media. But first things first, before anything else, what is Obinisa Talk?
Well, everyone by now should know that Obinisa Talk is the latest podcast that Lee and I are creating. We're doing it right now, where we're going to give you all the buzz about African, Caribbean, and Indigenous spirituality, as well as some of the religions. So we're going to go into topics that you want to know and discuss what is happening in the culture.
Nice. Well, in this episode, Nicole and I will let you know who we are, our backgrounds in African, Caribbean, and Indigenous spirituality. But first things first, the word Obinisa. Everyone wants to know what the word Obinisa means. Nicole, can you take that and explain it?
Yes. So when we think about the word Obinisa or Obini, that really means female, or means woman, or that woman.
And this girl talk.
Yep, girl talk. Exactly. Well, that's when we're combining the word Obinisa or Obini talk. We're saying girl talk, woman talk, females talk, or those women are talking. You know, the word is connected to the Yoruba language, which is West African. And then when you look at the Lukumi language, which is the Yoruba religious traditions that stem from Cuba, it's kind of like the way my father explained to me as Lukumi languages is it's like a patois off of the Yoruba language. So there's slight pronunciation differences. However, you could hear the similarities between West African Yoruba and Lukumi. And all that lends a hand to our backgrounds, Lee. So that's where I really want you to, before I jump into my backstory, let's kick it off with your backstory.
All right. So I am an espiritista. I'm an Apetebi. I am also a reconnecting Taina of, I consider myself identity-wise as an Afro-Indigenous Latina. I'm also rematriated, so I know a lot of people know that I rematriated back to Puerto Rico. And for me, it's definitely a spiritual thing. So it's definitely reconnecting more with, more of my ancestral practices, but coming from the motherland. I've been a espiritista for many, many years. This is something that I grew up in, from both my mother's side and my father's side. I come from a long line of brujas, not necessarily the men, mainly all the women. They were herbalists. They were like curanderas. They were espiritistas. They were brujas, because there is a difference. And, it's just, I come from a long line of women that were involved in our Caribbean practices. As far as the Taino spiritual side goes, that is something that I'm currently reconnecting. I did join a Yukayeke over here on the island, and I've learned so much, and I definitely cannot wait to be able to share that side of it as well. What about you, Nicole? What's your backstory?
I know my backstory is very similar to yours. There's some similarities, even though the difference is I may not come from or practice a Taino spirituality, but the Espiritismo is there. Okay. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about in this podcast. But before I don't want to digress. Espiritismo is a major commonality between you and I, Lee. You with the Puerto Rican Espiritismo, me with Cuban Espiritismo, but specifically Espiritismo Cruzado and El Cordón. That was practiced on both sides of my family. So when I'm looking at my background, I grew up, of course, Spiritismo, but more so with Ifa Orisha, the Lukumi traditions that stem from Cuba. And so both sides of my family were practicing spiritualists, as well as practicing initiates of the Orisha traditions in Lukumi. My father was the first Babalao in his family. He's let me see. He's second generation on his side. So I'm third generation Lukumi on my father's side, but fifth generation on my mother's side. So
Wow.
so practicing Orisha has gone generation after generation on both sides of my family. And then the same thing goes with Espiritismo Cruzado, which mostly was practiced on my mom's side, being that her side of the family came from Havana. My father's side, they practice Espiritismo El Condón, which is very prevalent in the east side of Cuba, which is Oriente Province, Santiago de Cuba, which was the original capital of Cuba. And then, of course, when both sides of my parents' family migrated to the US, my mom's side of the family lived in Puerto Rico for a while and then eventually came to Miami. And that's where, of course, my dad's family went from New York to Miami. They met. And then me and my siblings, we continued practicing on the practices. So when I was 9 years old, I received my kofa, which is part of receiving Hanabifa for ladies. And then for the longest time, that's what I had and carried with me. When I became a teenager, 18, 19, moved out on my own to go to college, I took the effort to then connect myself with Espiritismo more. It was in my family. However, me growing up, there was more predominant focus with Ifa and Orisha, especially with Ifa. And I went and decided, okay, I'm going to cultivate my spirituality. My father always told me, and my mom always encouraged it, one day you're going to have to cultivate your own spirituality. You're going to have a relationship with your own spirits. And that starts at the bóveda. When it came to Espiritismo, there really wasn't much guidance there from other family members because everyone was doing their own thing. And then all the elders at that point who could do something, they were already passed away. So it really was, so my journey with Espiritismo was really an intimate one. That's why, yes, I love Ifa, I love Orisha, but Espiritismo for me was something of me taking initiative with. And of course, taking initiative with what I had with my hand of Ifa, with my kofa, also with my warriors, because I received the warriors, the guerreros, when I was 9 as well. And that was also another intimate relationship that I was cultivating as well. And then in the meantime, from the time I was 19 to the time I was 27, when I went through the Cariocha, the initiation ceremony, to become a Santera, to become an Olorisha, all I had was my relationship with my altar, my bóveda, with Espiritismo, and then also what I did with Orisha and Ifa, getting my ritual work done, my ebols, my readings, and aligning myself with my destiny. So by the time I was 27, I was ready to go. I was confident. I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to go through the ceremony. And it's been over 5 years. This year will be 6 years having crowned Ochun. So my Alapatori, or the Orisha that oversees my head, is Ochun. And oh my gosh, we could have an episode just talking about that in general.
Just talking about that.
But that's the gist. And then eventually, but alongside that, we met online. We met through Instagram. And I think we talked about it in our in the bonus audio or the bonus podcast, how we met. So please, everyone, check that out. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out, because that's where Lee and I go into how we connected and how we've been able to connect with more people because of social media, especially Instagram.
Oh yeah. And very much so in the Espiritismo community.
Yes.
We were able to connect with a larger, like, for me, I didn't even know so many people grew up with it just like the way I did and you did, because for us, it was kind of taboo. I'm a little bit of the opposite of you. I grew up being taught, but not being taught, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was a way of life for our family. And it's just something that was passed down. So I didn't actually get into Ifa until my adult years, and that's something that maybe we'll get into it on these podcasts, but until I was physically sent to get into Ifa,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think to do it because it was always about our bóvedas and dealing with our muertos, and it is part of the culture. Um,
Yes.
in Puerto Rico, it's very much still prevalent.
Yeah.
So
This is a lifestyle. We've talked about this and we'll hear everyone say it. This is literally a lifestyle. It's something that's living and breathing and we interact with
yes,
on a daily. Now, and
yes,
I want to throw out there when Lee and I talk about Ifa, we're not talking about Ifa from Isheshe or African. We're talking about from Creole. Where
yes,
the Ifa that we're a part of is very connected with Lukumi, which is the Orisha traditions, La Legra de Ocho, the Orisha traditions from Cuba. And
yes,
part of the history, which we're going to talk about this season, that sort of history, when Ifa came to Cuba eventually, it went through its own metamorphosis. And so some people like to call it a diaspora Ifa or Ifa Creole, Criollo. But so when we're talking, so when Lee, just wanted to point that out there, when Lee and I are speaking about Ifa, as far as what we are connected with, we're talking about the Creolized one, what was surfacing around in Cuba. But I just said it about what we're going to talk about this season. So Lee, take it away. What can our audience expect this season for with us?
so I want everyone to look forward to discussions on different traditions, but not just specific traditions that are Caribbean in nature and the history of it. Okay, so we are going to have episodes that are going to surround Taino spirituality, Espiritismo, Criollo, Cruzado, because there another thing is that people don't realize is that there's different sections of Espiritismo in
Yes.
the Caribbean. And the practices are different between Puerto Rico, between Dominican Republic, between Cuba. So we're going to talk about all those differences and of course what everyone loves. We're going to talk about Orisha practices of Cuba because
Yes.
everyone wants to know about that.
But that's the thing about it. With this podcast, we want to highlight the beauty in all those individual traditions. And so that's how we're going to kick off this season with really the basis behind what we mainly are aligned and practice. And then hopefully for future stuff, go into other things. So we really got a hot season coming for everyone, one that
Yes.
we are passionate to share. So please, everyone, be sure to follow us. Subscribe through your favorite podcast outlet, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Amazon. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Obinisa Talk. So that way you can receive the latest alerts to when a new episode is released on a weekly basis. And remember,
Yes.
check us out on social media. Our information on Instagram, TikTok, it's all in our bios.
Yes. 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 Perfect. And with that, we will go ahead and wrap it up. Love you guys. Ashe, Hanhankatu.
Many blessings, fam. And
Uh,
until the
until
next
the next
one.
one.